Welcome to the Shadow People, Part 2. Once you've seen them once, you start noticing patterns. It is not random where they appear. Some places seem to attract them, as though the land itself whispers their presence. Old crossroads, abandoned hospitals, forests with tangled paths, even cities built on layers of history, these are their favored grounds. Travelers have long spoken of crossroads as liminal spaces, where the world bends slightly and the line between here and elsewhere becomes thin. Shadow people are drawn to such points, hovering at thresholds where humans might hesitate, reflect, or fear. Across the globe, these patterns are remarkably consistent. In Europe, a small village in Germany reported nightly visits from featureless figures in the narrow alleys and dark corners of centuries-old homes. In North America, a cluster of incidents emerged in abandoned mills and train stations, spaces where time and memory accumulate. In Asia, particularly in Japan, children reported seeing men in the dark at the edge of forest paths or temple thresholds. Each story, though culturally unique, shared one element. The figures always appeared at a point of passage, a threshold, a place between spaces or states. Thresholds are not always physical. They can be moments of transition, waking from sleep, walking between rooms, or even moments of emotional vulnerability. The shadow people seem to sense hesitation, fear, or heightened awareness. They appear when perception is most acute, when the mind is slightly unbalanced, when the soul, if you will, is most receptive. One account from an English boy describes seeing a dark figure in his bedroom doorway precisely as he was deciding whether to flee to his parents' room. Another, in rural Canada, recounted a shadow that appeared just as he stepped from the safety of his cabin into a fog-shrouded path. There are also rules, though few can understand them fully. They do not cross certain lines, do not enter some spaces without purpose. Hospitals, especially older wards, are frequent sites, as are libraries, schools, and places where time and attention concentrate. Children notice them first, often unafraid, unshaped by adult logic. Adults may feel a chill or see movement in the corner of an eye, but rarely comprehend the full scope. The young, however, often speak of whispers, of shapes observing silently, of figures that vanish when directly confronted. And these rules seem consistent across continents. Cultural variations differ. Jinn in Middle Eastern tales, the old hag in the British Isles, Kage-onna in Japan, but the behaviors are strikingly similar. They watch, they linger, they appear at the edge of thresholds and then vanish before comprehension catches up. The patterns emerge slowly, but once you begin noticing, it is almost impossible to ignore. Then I met someone who claimed they could communicate with them. And what I learned from that encounter changed everything I thought I knew about these watchers. The stories I collected made one truth unmistakable. Children perceive what adults cannot. A 5-year-old girl in Japan described a tall figure standing at the edge of her tatami room, whispering words she could not fully understand. Her parents saw nothing. A boy in Norway told me of a shadow hovering just outside his bedroom door during the long winter nights, always still, always waiting, yet never approaching too close. Adults often see only a flicker, a shadow in the corner of a room, or feel a subtle pressure on their chest, but children sense the presence fully, without fear holding them back. Perhaps innocence makes them more attuned, or perhaps they are less burdened by disbelief. Across cultures, these figures take on different names, yet their behavior remains consistent. In the Middle East, they are called jinn, beings that exist on the threshold of human perception, neither wholly good nor evil. In the British Isles, the old hag is reported in sleep paralysis accounts, a silent observer pressing on the chest of the sleeper. In Japan, kage-onna or kuroko shadow women appear along thresholds, sometimes whispering warnings, sometimes remaining distant. Even in Africa, tales of the tokoloshe describe dark, featureless figures that haunt children and travelers alike. Though each culture adds its own flavor, the underlying traits are the same. They appear at edges, they observe, and they vanish before understanding can take hold. And then there are the rules, though we cannot fully understand them. They seem to respect thresholds, doorways, corners, crossroads, and avoid direct confrontation unless provoked or invited. Observers note that attempts to chase or capture these figures are often futile. They vanish, shift, or appear elsewhere, leaving the observer questioning their own senses. Timing matters. They often appear at moments of indecision, fear, or emotional vulnerability. Those who notice them most clearly are often sensitive to light, sound, or subtle shifts in the environment. Geography also plays a role. Shadow people are rarely reported in uniform patterns. Instead, clusters appear in areas with layered histories, abandoned structures, or places steeped in energy or memory. In some rural European towns, entire households reported nightly visits over decades. In American cities, abandoned hospitals and old schools are frequent sights. Children, again, are disproportionately aware, able to perceive details that adults miss. A figure standing still for hours at a hallway's end, or shapes flickering along walls during the quietest hours of night. The more I pieced these accounts together, the more I realized that these beings follow an internal logic. They observe, they test, they measure perception, but never randomly. Every appearance has timing, every shadow has intent, and every whisper, every fleeting glimpse is a lesson. Patterns emerge only when the stories are viewed together, across continents, centuries, and generations. And then I met the one who claimed she could speak with them, and what she revealed changed everything I believed about how these shadows operate. The woman who claimed she could communicate with them was unlike anyone I had met. She lived in a small village in northern Italy and had experienced encounters since childhood. Unlike most, she did not react with fear. She spoke softly, describing the figures in detail, noting their movements, their choices, their apparent intelligence. According to her, the shadows were not merely watchers. They were aware, capable of response, and sometimes, just sometimes, willing to convey messages. She explained that communication was subtle, never direct. A shift in the corner of the eye, a brush of air, a whisper too quiet to catch consciously. Some messages were warnings. Avoid this place. Do not sleep alone. Prepare yourself. Others were more cryptic, almost like puzzles, meant to test patience or observation. She said the figures recognize fear, hesitation, and confidence alike. The braver the observer, the more complex the interaction became, and always there was a lesson embedded, though not every observer survived or remembered it fully. Children often had similar interactions, though their awareness was untainted by disbelief. One boy in Scandinavia described shadow figures that spoke to him using gestures, patterns of movement, and whispers that only he could hear. They guided him, tested him, and eventually vanished when they deemed the lesson complete. Adults rarely received such clarity. Most only experienced fleeting glimpses or sensations. A hand on the shoulder, a door closing softly, objects displaced, or a shadow reflected incorrectly in a mirror. Even with these accounts, patterns of behavior persisted. Thresholds mattered. Time of day mattered. Certain structures, particularly those with deep history or layered human activity, were more likely to host encounters. The figures observed, waited, and only engaged when perception was acute. In many cases, attempts to force interaction only led to frustration or increased anxiety. They are deliberate in their appearances, methodical in their choices, and precise in timing. And so, as the patterns emerged, one truth became unavoidable. These beings were more than superstition, more than folklore. They were a consistent presence across space and time, obeying rules humans did not fully understand. They had a purpose, a method, and perhaps a plan that spanned decades, centuries, or even longer. The woman's account was the first hint of this, a glimpse of intelligence behind the shadows, a subtle acknowledgement that what humans observe is only a fragment of a far larger reality. Then I found records of encounters that went further than observation, further than messages, into places and events that no one could explain. And that's when the story became truly dark. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned for part 3.